such a fool for a vintage look, Jorge. I mean, it's not because I'm old. I just love a classic. Hey, hi dolls, it's me, Wilma Fingerdoo, with the Fingerdoo review of RuPaul's Drag Race UK Season 4, Episode 5. And before we get started, I got some tipper-doos to thank. David Senier, who not only enjoys the Wilma Fingerdoo review here on YouTube, he's also a fan of Knock Knock Ghosts on Discovery Plus. David, I hope I got your last name right. It was either Senier or Segner. So I went with the softer G, shut your face. I also want to thank Emily Custard, who sent me a tipper-doo along with a message that she's been watching my video for years and that my positivity helped her to drum up the courage to come out to her family. Well, I am just so flattered to hear that, Emily, and thank you for telling me. But more importantly, I hope that your coming out was as fabulous as you've made me feel. Seriously. And of course, I wouldn't be thanking tipper-doos if I didn't include my tipper-doo boyfriend, Vito. I love you, Vito. Mwah! Seriously. I also want to welcome David Voglet, a.k.a. Darrovo, a new diva to the Fingerdoo family on Patreon, although Darrovo has been a member of the Fingerdoo family for years, I tell you. Years. Welcome to the Patreon level of stardom, David, and I'm so glad things are looking up for you, finally. Here's to human survival. Oh, I don't have my tree. I will get to that in a second. If you'd like to join Darrovo and the rest of my Patreoners on Patreon, where I do two live chats a month, the link is down below. So is the link to being a tipper-doo, I'm just going to say. I also need to send a shout out to Lady Jenny Anytime, Martha Grunwald, one of my makeup enablers, and Nick Sweet, another one of my makeup enablers. No judgment, Lady Jenny, but WTF! No, seriously, I want to thank them for their hard work on the Fingerdoo family group on Facebook. I hate to admit I don't get over there as much as I'd like or as often as I should, but on Saturday, October 29th, 3 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. in the UK, they're hosting a Halloween makeup party, and I'll be there. We'll chat, we'll put on looks, share tips, tricks, and maybe a few treats. It's the interwebs, so it's going to be limited. The link to the Fingerdoo gang or the Fingerdoo family is in the description box down below. It doesn't cost anything, but you do need to be a member of the group to join the chat. So I hope to see you there. Seriously. Now, Jorge, drink me. Oh, thank you, Jorge. Why no ice? Oh, because I complained it took up too much space in the cup. You're not wrong. Ginger cran and a lot of odd. Yum, yum, yum. Okay, let's get to it. So, after bidding Sminty the fondest of farewells, emotions were high in the workroom. Again. Or is it still? Poor Pixie was wallowing in her pity party for one, and as much as I like Pixie, I felt she was broadcasting her lifelong struggle of being overlooked to garner sympathy from the other queens. But Danny wouldn't have it. For every poor, pitiful me Pixie lob, Danny had a I'm the Chucky of drag to volley back at her. Still, Danny getting all the praise for the win and Pixie not getting, well, any praise for a very close second was twisted her tits, poor thing. I, for one, am glad Danny reminded her that Rue called her beautiful because Pixie was ignoring the great to focus on the annoying, bless her heart. Seriously. If anyone had anything to wallow in, it had to be Baby, who got the big Drag Race isn't a finishing school wrist smack from Rue. But Baby seemed to process the information a bit better than Pixie and at least appeared ready to shift it into high gear. About time. It's episode 5. Seriously. The next day, after a sad twerk for Sminty and a nod to Danny for her second repeater badge, as I predicted, in Sminty's absence, the queens decided to make fun of Johnbers and the fact that she was the only one in the workroom without a badge. Johnbers loved that. Thankfully, Rue's video message about half-full spoons of sugar and clawed chimbleys interrupted Johnbers' lament. And then, there was Rue, fighting off the British stamp with a big old puffy coat. Or she just wanted to give the queen something to read because the library was open. That's right, it was mini challenge time. God bless everybody. Cheddar went first. Her calling Black Peppa Crack Peppa was hilarious. Baby telling Dakota her legs were as long as she makes conversations feel was brilliant. Dakota, bless her, tried to burn Cheddar gorgeous by calling her Age Blue Stilton gorgeous, but to be honest, by the time Dakota was done, the other queens had lost interest. Black Peppa told Danny Beard to stop using Marmite as a foundation, but I have to tell you, I think it looks more like she uses paste, just saying. Pixie was on a slow boil, if you ask me, but she did ding Johnburst for being so old that her first gig was chasing the snakes out of Ireland, and then Pixie finished it off by telling Baby she was pro-choice. LaPhil called Johnburst Mrs. Smithers in a dress. Well, eventually. Danny shot one across Pixie's bow by saying it's too bad that after being famous for shagging Tia Coffee, that charisma isn't sexually transmittable. Go on, Danny. Pick on that scab. See what it gets you. Seriously. Johnburst hit Cheddar with another ding at her age, saying that she threw the first brick at Stonehenge. All in all, not too cringeworthy a trip to the library. Well done to everybody, but particularly to Pixie Polite for winning another mini challenge. See? She's capable of winning. Now all she needs to do is aim higher. Then it was Maxi Challenge time, and as suspected, this week it was the Rusical, and not just any Rusical. They would be performing in the unauthorized sequel, Larry Poppins, a twisted tale about Mary Poppins' evil twin, who is imperfect in every way. And that wasn't all. To completely embrace their West End fantasy, the queens would be singing live. Johnburst was thrilled. Again! And because Pixie had won the mini challenge, she got to assign the roles. All of them. Now it was the rest of the queens who were thrilled. Well, except for LaPhil, who seemed to get titillated by the prospect of performing live. Geez, I hope she was talking about the theater. Right away, the queens got down to reading the script, or they would have if the gob on Dakota hadn't forced Cheddar to ask her what was wrong. Oh, nothing, except Dakota doesn't like musicals. What kind of a drag queen is she if she doesn't like musicals? Seriously. The other queens were gagged. Oh, but Dakota did them one better. She'd also never seen Mary Poppins. Hell, I'm shocked we didn't lose lives at that revelation. How do you get through your early years without a steady stream of classic Disney? Seriously. I think there was child abuse there. Once the queens had put the focus back on themselves, they gave the Larry Poppins a listen. One of the lead characters was OG Mary, and LaPhil jumped all over that, so she could show she'd learned from last week's comments. And because no one else wanted the part, OG Mary was hers. Lick Van Dick, everyone's favorite Cockney Bidley. Oh, geez, that's a lot of Dick and Cockney flying around. I better not lose my monetization. Thank God for the tipper dues. Anyway, it just seemed right that Danny Beard try her hand on Lick Van Dick. Although, truth be told, I was kind of waiting for Pixie to give her a lesser role. Just me. Then it got interesting. When they reached the part of the bird lady who was literally an old bird, Cheddar and Johnburst jumped all over it. The editing of this moment was weird because they jumped right away to Johnburst saying some BS about it being more important for the role to be cast correctly than for the person putting their hand up to get the role they wanted. I don't know. It seemed to me that Cheddar wasn't the only queen with her hand in the air. Pixie must have thought Johnburst had made a better grab for the part than Cheddar because, well, she gave the old bird to Johnburst. And she was glad to get it. Next on the casting block was Mother Prude, and Baby jumped so hard on that part that no one dared challenge her. Look at her and Johnburst with the power moves. Speaking of power moves, the casting of the Prude twins was next, and quick as a flash, Dakota put her hand up, but not because she wanted to play a twin, quite the opposite. She thought playing a child was too obvious for her, and she wanted to go big, or, well, go home, by playing Rochelle La Roche, a French cockroach and head waitress at Binland. But, surprise, surprise, someone else had their eye on Rochelle too. The alien queen herself and part-time roach impersonator, Cheddar Gorgeous. Dun, dun, dun. This This spawned an impromptu audition between the two queens. Maybe Pixie felt bad for not giving Cheddar the old bird, but to be honest, Cheddar's French accent wasn't anything to sniff at, and LaRoche went to Cheddar, which left Dakota playing one of the Rude twins along with Peppa after all. Dakota looked thrilled, poor thing, so much so that Cheddar offered her LaRoche, but even Dakota couldn't deny Cheddar's French accent blew her out of the water. Dakota also admitted that she didn't hate the role of the twins, so after all that, it was the twins for Dakota and Black Peppa. And remember, we've seen queens who've lost roles they wanted upstage everyone in the role they didn't want, so fingers crossed for Dakota, seriously. Of course, that left the title role of Larry Poppins to Miss Polite herself. Funny how that happened, eh? Right away, the queens got down to memorizing their parts, lyrics, and all, but it was clear that some were more method than others, although in Danny's world, they pronounce it Davina de Campo. Dakota assured Peppa that she wasn't going to be one of those queens with a gob on her because she didn't get the part she wanted, and boy, was Peppa happy to hear that. If she and Dakota were going to be twins, they had to be on the same page. And even though their roles didn't do a lot of singing, they were on every page of that Rusical. So now's not the time for breakdowns, I'm just going to say. Speaking of breakdowns, I'm not sure if Pixie was too busy casting everyone else or just didn't bother listening to the Rusical, but she quickly realized that Larry Poppins wasn't the part she thought it was. How the role differed from her expectations remained a mystery, but Danny Beard very generously offered to switch roles with Pixie. Of course she did. Let her play Lick My Cockney Whatsits, and Danny will take the title role. What could go wrong? And then it was on to vocal coaching with Michelle Visage and Dane Chalfin. But what we got was more of a train wreck. Right off the top, we learned not to book Peppa for singing gigs, because she can't. While Michelle told Dakota not to worry about being beautiful, although I didn't hear Michelle say in the Rusical. Baby's performance of Mother Prude surprised me. The lyrics seemed to take a huge dig at RuPaul. Mother Ru, Mother Prude, no? And it wasn't flattering. So when Michelle stopped Baby to ask her if she knew who she was channeling during the number, I was all like, yeah, RuPaul. But Michelle said Britney Spears. I thought, Britney's not a power-hungry money whore. I think Michelle jinxed Danny Beard when she told her she was made for this role, because Danny immediately went on to cock it up so bad that I don't think she got one verse out. Needless to say, Michelle's advice to Danny Beard was to Danny Beard the F out of it. Vivid. Speaking of Vivid, who didn't see Pixie's complete breakdown coming, poor thing? I knew nothing good would come from her switching her role, and this rehearsal did not prove me wrong. Poor Pixie had so much trouble getting even the most basic of notes to leave her lips. It was so devastating that we never really got to Cheddar, bless. I'm just going to say that John Burr's rehearsal was my favorite. From the light opera tilt she started off singing into her version of Dita Von Teese, I was thoroughly entertained. Well done, John Burr, seriously. LaPhil didn't fill me with confidence during her rehearsal either, and I have to say, I think there were too many factors for these queens to juggle. Reading their lines, keeping up with the music, interacting on stage. It can be a lot. I mean, seriously, doesn't anyone else think it's odd that John Burr's had the best rehearsal? Just me? Then, with their confidence soaring, it was on to choreography with Michelle Visage's Strictly Dancing partner, Giovanni Pernici. Did you see Michelle when she was on Strictly Dancing? She and Gio did such a great job, seriously. As for the Queen's performance during this rehearsal, no one seemed to make it out alive, bless their cotton socks. Everyone had issues. Everyone struggled, but none more than poor Dakota. I think she would have been fine if all she had to learn was one number, but she and Peppa looked like they had to learn 4. Babies, Danny's, Pixie's, and their own. No wonder Dakota didn't want to be a twin. Seriously. Something else that was a struggle was watching Giovanni and Danny Beard flirt with each other. I think Danny actually blushed, although it's hard to tell under all that makeup. But as flattered as Danny was, the difficulty of Gio's choreography kept her from being swept off her feet. Which is too bad, because being swept off her feet might have actually been helpful in this situation. Still, As hateful as Danny thought Gio was by the end of the rehearsal, there were still lingering looks. The only one who seemed to get off scot-free was Jonber's blonde. Giovanni asked her how she would move during her number, and then she left it at that. So either Jonber's is so good she doesn't need direction, or so bad that it's, well, right for the character. I guess we'll find out soon enough. Then it was time to get ready for the Rusical. As the queens got ready, the conversation was light, but they were all laser focused on the task at hand and not getting sent home. Should be the point all the time, no? On the main stage, Rue looked good. Well, better than last week at any rate. I love that silver wig, but I felt there were too many different lace patterns on the dress. It distracted me. Michelle Visage was channeling some serious Eliza Doolittle at the races vibes in that bubble updo, and I mean that in the sexy way. Alan Carr was back looking nummy in his neutrals, and joining them at the judges' table, the illuminous Hannah Waddingham looking beyond stunning and beyond thrilled to be able to witness a Rusical. Speaking of Rusicals, Larry Poppins was up first. I liked the Rusical. No one sucked, but I have to admit it looked to me like they were lip syncing. Am I wrong? It distracted me a little, but not enough to not notice how well everyone did. Pixie opened the show like the pro she is, looking fabulous and sounding even better. Baby did well, but if I were to pick anyone as not giving all out on this performance, it would be her. As good as she was, I felt like I could see her counting in her head during her solo. Just me. Dakota wasn't kidding when she said the twins were on stage the whole time. The whole time! I have to say, I was impressed by both her and Black Peppa. Peppa particularly was the bigger personality on stage between the two of them, and I really loved her makeup for this character. But for someone who's not a fan of musicals, Dakota didn't suck. Far from it compared to how she normally is, but compared to some of the other queens, well, she was another one whose sparkle was on medium for me. Jonber's old bird had me at her first cooey. Jonber's looked fabulous, and her number totally stole the show. If anyone was counting her out before the Rusical, they'll definitely have to think again. Mr. Jonber, seriously, well done. Cheddar as Rochelle LaRoche wasn't as over the top as some of the other characters she shared the stage with, but her performance was fabulous nonetheless. LaFelle did a great job too, but I feel if her part hadn't been at the end of the Rusical, I wouldn't have remembered her at all. It was such a small part, but she did a great job. I mean, how could you not with a closing line like that? Seriously. But there was no denying that this was Danny's show, not because she did the title character, but because she performed circles around everyone else. She was on stage almost as much as the twins and never stopped performing. She reacted to everything and everyone on that stage, whether she was the focus or not. I'm also super impressed with how Danny's able to hide her facial hair in her makeup. Seriously, for someone who's in clown white as often as she is, Danny's got some mad skills, I'm just going to say. But my favorite part of the show was Hannah Waddingham's face during the whole shebang. She was so invested in the show and the Queen's performances. She was a total delight, just saying. And we weren't done. There was still the catwalk to get through. Category is West End Wonders. Pixie Polite was first in a gorgeous wig and ensemble inspired by the musical Hairspray. And she even had a costume change that was as good as any musical would. I love this look. And Pixie sold the hell out of it. Fingerdoo for Pixie. Jonber's Blonde was next in a Dior couture fantasy of Singing in the Rain. I love this look, but it looked like her pannier hip cages were twisted round. Still, Fingerdoo for Jonber's. I hate it when my panniers get twisted. It took me a moment to realize that Dakota was channeling Funny Girl because, well, she just took my breath away in this outfit. But once I did, I had no trouble giving Miss Schiffer a Fingerdoo. You heard me. Sweet Marie and the Ships at Sea. I have no idea why I didn't film my review of Black Peppa's fabulous runway. The only thing I can think of is that it was so stunning, I passed out. That's the story, and I'm sticking with it. That said, I do wish that the head of her lion had been screwed on a little straighter. It was tilted and looking shy. Still, Fingerdoo for Peppa. Cheddar's angry inch from Hedwig was stunning. Like she'd wear anything less. Fingerdoo for that angry inch. Just gonna say. How stunning was LaFille's interpretation of The King and I? Stunning enough for a Fingerdoo at any rate, I'll tell you what. One of my favorite looks of the night was Baby's denim ensemble inspired by the award-winning musical and Juliet. So of course, I gave her a Fingerdoo. The undisputed star of the catwalk this week, though, had to go to Danny Beard's Ode to the Little Shop of Horrors. This was amazing. Everything moved, including the mouse. So how do you not give something like that a Fingerdoo? No, you just give it. Give it! Then it was time to judge the judgeable. Black Peppa and Cheddar Gorgeous were safe, so they frigged the hell out of there. As for the rest of the queens, Pixie was well reviewed, especially for opening the show so strongly, and even more so for having such a struggle bus of a rehearsal, bless her heart. Jombers was another one who got strong reviews from the judges. From her first cooee to plucking herself, it was a great night for JB, seriously. Dakota seemed to get overshadowed by her twin Peppa, but it was unanimous that Dakota's look was beautiful. What was ugly was the judges hearing that Dakota doesn't like musicals. I thought Michelle and Hannah were going to burst into flames right then and there. Seriously. LaPhil didn't disappoint with her performance, even though she could have gone bigger with it, and her runway was a huge success. Baby was another one who didn't fail, she just didn't take the role where it needed to be. Hannah took a moment to try to make Baby feel better about her performance, and try as she might, it seemed that Baby had dug herself into an emotional hole, bless her. What can anyone say about Danny Beard's performance in the Rusical except that she blew everyone else out of the water, and her runway look was the cherry on a very delicious sundae. And yes, Danny was the one Hannah was telling was worth her trip to Drag Race. Here's to Danny. Done, seriously. Back in the workroom, the queens were feeling it. Danny was chuffed, but Dakota was up in her feels naturally. Baby was still feeling whatever it was that she was going through during judgment, and even the queens lauding her with compliments couldn't pull her out of it, bless. LaPhil was also feeling the stress. She was definitely on the fence as far as the judges were concerned, so there was an air of helplessness threatening to envelop her as well. Back on the main stage, I don't think it was a surprise to anyone that this week's winner, again, was Danny Beard, and rightly so. As far as who was in the bottom, it was LaPhil, Baby, and Dakota, but Phil got thrown a lifeline, and it was down to Dakota and Baby in the bottom. The song this week was No Way by Cast of Six featuring Renee Lamb. This was an epic lip sync. I thought Baby was going to sweep the floor with Dakota, and it's not like she didn't try, but like that lip sync week one, Dakota surprised everyone by keeping up. Did she outdance Baby? Well, maybe not, but her performance as a whole was a surprise. Well, at least it was to me. Although I did think it was over for Dakota when she walked off stage during the lip sync. If history has taught us anything, it's that a lip sync exit never bodes well. But quickly as you like, Dakota popped back in the most adorable way ever. So when the music died, it was no surprise to me. Well, actually, there was a big surprise. Before Rue could announce the winner, Baby surprised everyone by announcing that she needed to go home and take care of herself. I was shocked that she picked after the lip sync to do it, but needless to say, everyone was gagged. Rue, Hannah, Danny, the queens. With all those theater people there, it was like a soap opera cliffhanger, which, as you all know, Soap Opera Cliffhanger was the name of my Fringe play. So sadly, it was Baby who ended up sashaying away. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Not everyone is built for the pressures of competition. So I'm glad we got to meet Baby, but I also hope she takes time to take care of herself and return to the stage as soon as possible, because I, for one, am already missing her. Because of Baby's self-elimination, Dakota Schiffer Shantae to compete another day. Let's hope she gets a touch ugly next week, although with it being Snatch Game, I'll bet she impersonates a beauty from the 60s like Sharon Tate or Marianne Faithfull. So, fingers crossed, she gives whomever it is some ugly edges, I'm just saying. What about you? Were you gagged that Baby eliminated herself, or was the writing on the wall? If Baby hadn't bowed out, do you think she would have sashayed anyway, or did she save herself in the lip sync? What about Dakota? Did she just put off the inevitable, or will she finally wow the judges next week surprise performance. All we can do is tune into RuPaul's Drag Race UK next week to see how it all plays out. And then when you're done, you come on back and you see me so you and I can compare notes. Now, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and if you'd like to help support this channel, I have all the links down in the description box below. Until next week, it's me! Serious. I've heard that there have been people that were angry that Baby eliminated herself, but I love how she did it by saying that she needed to take care of herself, because I think in this day and age, we talk about mental health a lot more, not just freely, but from a much more educated place. And I think when people hear somebody saying, I need to take care of myself, they understand that that means something. So bless Baby. I respect her choice. I hope she gets herself together, and I hope she gets back on stage as soon as she can, because I don't know, if there was going to be a double Shantae, that one would have made sense to me, because they both killed that lip sync. Oh my God. Dakota, I have to say, Dakota was more impressive, because I expected none of that from her, and she threw it down as hard as she could. Bless everyone, I'm just going to say. She better not screw it up next week. If Dakota goes home next week, I'll be... Mind you, who else? Who else? Her. Snatch Game. I don't know. If Danny wins a fourth badge, I think some of the queens may just exit. It'll be the Vivian all over again. What is it with these Scouse queens? Seriously.